Good morning and welcome to Mass Memorial Virtual Sunday School. Theme for the quarter, Worship in the Covenant Community. Unit 3, Psalms of Thanksgiving and Praise. Sunday, November 3rd, 2022. Lesson titled, When the Road is Long. Psalms 23, 1 through 6. Our key verse, Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalms 23, 6, King James Version. The aim for our lesson today is to apply the attributes of a shepherd to God's care for us in 2024. Adopt a psalmist's sense of security in knowing God as a shepherd. To create a scenario in which you could experience God's leading beside still waters and restoring your soul. Our lesson background, much of this has been given by Ms. Griffin in some of our previous lessons, but I'll just make a short note of some important names and some important facts. The book of Psalms is the largest Old Testament book of poetry. This book expresses joy, hope, prayer, praise, faith, and lamentations, which means suffering, pain, and crying out for help. And the authors of the book of Psalms, Ms. Griffin covered some of these. I'll refresh our memory. Some of the authors of the book of Psalms are King David. The primary author of the book of Psalms is credited with writing 73 Psalms. David was a poet, a harpist, and the second king of Israel. David also was a shepherd. One of the other authors of the book of Psalms is Moses. Moses is believed to have written the 90th and the 91st Psalm after completing the tabernacle in the desert. Some of the other authors of book of Psalms are Asaph, who is credited with writing about 11 Psalms. Asaph was a worship leader in the court of King David and King Solomon. He was a Levite singer, a prophet, and a worship leader. Some of his most notable psalms are Psalm 50, 73, 76, 77, and probably 75, 77, and 82. A few more authors of the book of Psalms, the sons of Korah, believed to have written 11 Psalms. Korah, these were musicians and workers in the court. King Solomon is another author who wrote Psalm 72 and 127. And there are several other authors. Some of them are anonymous. King Solomon was the son of King David by Bathsheba. He was not the first son. He was the second son born to that union. Other important words that we'll constantly see throughout this lesson is the word shepherd. A shepherd is a herdsman who takes care of, protect, and provide for his flock, which could be sheep, cattle, or whatever he's herding. Restore means to refresh and repair the health of someone or something. Other important words in our lesson we will see are anointed, which means to consecrate by spreading oil on to someone. And normally we see this in some churches. They'll anoint your head with oil. Another, and probably one of the most important two words are rod and staff. These were items that the shepherd literally carried to protect his flock or retrieve those animals that had fallen into mishap. And in our scriptures, we will see how God uses the rod and staff on our behalf. And let us remember, the 23rd Psalm is considered a metaphor. And we've talked about this in the past, in that God is our shepherd, as would be an actual shepherd taking care of his flock. And a metaphor is a comparison, a comparison of two things that are unrelated. It means something is, And in our lesson today, God is our shepherd, and we are his sheep. Our lesson scriptures, the Lord is my shepherd, Psalms 23, 1 through 3. These are some of the most famous and most recited verses in the Old Testament book of poetry. I'm going to read Psalms 23, 1 through 3. Psalms 23, 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalms 23, 2. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Psalms 23, 3. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. And going back and talking about, this is one of the most powerful verses that you can recite. And if your faith is strong enough, it comes to pass. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He lets us know that the psalmist lets us know that God provides all our needs as a shepherd. And we are considered his flock, so we are under his guidance and his protection. And in verse 23, 2, it said, this is a description of what a shepherd does for his flocks. We know that a shepherd has to find water. He has to find a quiet place for the sheep to rest. So this verse paints a beautiful picture and a scenery of pastures and quiet, still waters. And remember that God provides us as his sheep with rest and peacefulness. And all he requires that we have faith and trust in him. And we too will feel like that we are in beautiful green pastures, and we'll feel at peace if we have as much faith in God as we need to. Psalm 23, 3 says, he restoreth my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness. And we know when a shepherd has a flock of sheep, he does not lead them astray. He tries to keep them on the right path. Sometimes sheep herders will have a dog that also help him to keep the sheep from going astray. So in this verse, it rings true that our future, God guides his people to live with justice and integrity. And when it talks about the path, there's two paths, path of righteousness and a path that leads to death or a crooked path. So God leads his people in the time of difficulty. And what he does is, as our faith grows stronger, we know that we can stay on that path of righteousness and we don't have to stray. Doesn't mean we won't stray somewhere down the line, but God provides us with that method to return to him. And so remember that there are two paths, path of righteousness and a path which leads to death. And as God is our shepherd, he encourages us to follow the path of righteousness. And in that case, and continuing on with our scriptures, in the next 3 scriptures, we will see how God acts as a host and also acts as a shepherd. This set of scriptures, Psalms 23, 4 through 6, the Lord is my host. I'm going to read Psalms 23, 4 and 23, 5. Psalms 23, 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Psalms 23, 5, thou prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. In verses 23, 4, the psalmist is letting us know that no matter how dire things get, and as his reference to walking through the valley of shadow of death, he is confident that God is with him because God promised to be with him. And the rod and the staff are described as tools of protection. And let us be mindful that God is the comforter. we look at the rod as that tool that protects, that God protects us with, and the staff as pulling us back onto the right track, as a shepherd with his sheep. So the rod and the staff are God's tools that he keeps before us to keep us from going astray. And when he says that, the psalmist says that the shadow of death I will fear no evil, that's a very heavy duty statement. It lets us know his complete trust and faith in God, no matter how dire things get. He is looking at what God does. And in Psalm 23:5, this verse really goes back to the subtitle of this, "The Lord is my host." And it says, "Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemy." This verse describes God both as a host and a shepherd, and that God provides what is necessary and in abundance. The psalmist treats his guests as God would in his presence of his enemies. He lets us know whose side God is on. So God can act as both the host and the shepherd. And we should find confidence in knowing that God has many capacities. He can come in any situation. He can be a host. He can provide for us, anoint our head. And when he provides for us what is necessary and in abundance. We need to keep that in mind. He does not want us to suffer. He does not want us to be without anything. And we go back to that first verse, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And these are some verses that we should carry and repeat every day. The last verse under "The Lord is my host" is verse 6. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." As we go back and remember what the shepherd does, literally a shepherd may have sheepdogs, which help him to keep the sheep on the right track. So if we look at this verse, the goodness and mercy acts like a sheepdog, keeping us on the right track. And the last thing of this verse is a promise for the future, that those who trust God will live in his presence forever. This is, besides the Lord's Prayer in the New Testament, this is probably one of the most memorable scriptures. And most of the time we learn this in Sunday school, or we learn it as a young child. And this is something that if we can't do anything else in time of troubles, we can just ask God to be there. And we know that he is our shepherd. And all we have to say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He will fulfill our needs. And we have to keep that in mind. And going back to some practical application, Psalm 23, we know it's been one of the most recognized and memorable scriptures in the Bible. And it's one of the scriptures that reinforces our faith, because we know who God is and that he is truly our shepherd. And we know this because we have had our own experiences as sheep that have gone astray. Yet God is always there for us. God is always there to guide and protect us daily and to meet our every need in spite of what we do. And as sheep that go astray, the shepherd recovers those sheep. And this is where the staff comes in. The staff has a little crook on it. And the shepherd literally can reach down and grab that sheep by the neck or the legs and retrieve him from some mishap. So this is no different from how God treats us. He can retrieve us from our mishap. He still guides and protects us. And so the first verse of the psalm is probably the most powerful, as I stated earlier. And through our trust and faith In God, our souls find rest and peace, growth, and an abundance of life in the presence of God. The 23rd Psalm also lets us know that during our trials and tribulation, again, God is our protector and comforter. As we go through our daily lives, we need to find a quiet moment to reflect on this scripture. It is one that will rejuvenate us when we're not faring so well, and when we truly believe we can share our story with others. And amidst life chaos, God offers peace that surpasses all understanding. And as others see us being patient and kind and optimistic in our trials and tribulation, it causes them to say, what brings about this peace? We're demonstrating the peace that God wants us to show to others. So this is one way that we can pass or show an example of this 23rd Psalm. Is how we carry ourselves in the presence of trials and tribulation. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for listening. And please continue to join us for our virtual lessons and have a blessed day. Thank you.